Hello. How are
Hi,
you?
good. How are you?
I'm good. Welcome to episode 2 of Career Congregation. I am joined today by my beautiful friend Teddy Baxter. We were roommates in university, and we both have had quite the life journeys. And I'm very happy to have her on as my first guest. She's also in the healing, helping world now, working with people, helping them through difficult times. And it's been quite a journey for her to get there. In case any of you missed the first episode or don't know the background, Career Congregation is very much a weekly conversation about all things career. And the guests that I will have on each week will all have worked in very different industries, but all will share the same sort of themes of having to navigate through rock bottoms and really like difficult life circumstances to overcome, and then now are shining in their careers. With my background as a therapist, I see this a lot where people come to therapy in these rock bottom moments thinking that like their life is over, that they're a failure, they're dealing with all this vulnerability. Unemployment is a big one, or like changing jobs. And what I've learned from my own experiences and what I've witnessed with my clients is that so often these moments are actually the beginning of a really wonderful story for so many people. Um, Originally, this was going to be called Fall to Rise. That was how I wanted to originally name the podcast, but then from doing group work with friends and family members every week, I realized I want to have this the momentum of a weekly meetup where people can talk about careers and give each other inspiring stories and motivation and tips and all of that. So that's where the word congregation came into it. And so it's career congregation because it's a weekly conversation. So, welcome, Teddy.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. So, can you tell me or tell all of us a little bit about your background, where you were born,
Yeah.
school, family?
Yeah, so I'm from the East Coast. I'm from Long Island. I'm the youngest of older brother and sister. Have a really close family. We've always been really close. I went to school through ninth grade, and then I went to boarding school. Always sort of struggled with substance abuse. That's been a part of my story for my whole life. Went to after I got kicked out of boarding school for substances, and then tried to go to college, didn't work out, ended up getting sober when I was 20, moved out to California, kind of started my life over there at 20, and that's where
You
I
met
met
me.
Megan. We were at SMC at Santa Monica City College, and both sort of figuring out we knew we wanted to go to a UC school and transfer. So we met in statistics.
That was such an awful class.
I know. We were terrible at it. Megan and I both were like just joined together because we were both struggling so much, and we tried to have study sessions, and we were just like so bad. But it was the beginning of a beautiful friendship. And so then I went to UCLA, and yeah, and lived out in California for about 9 years, and stayed sober through then. Moved back to New York when I was 27, 28. and kind of moved back to the city, or moved to the city for the first time. It was a huge change for me. Got a job at like a digital planning agency, and then I ended up getting a job at a real estate company, a big real estate company in New York City, and started in marketing there. And I it was like a total, I loved it. It was really fast paced. I just took to it really easily, but
You were really good at it, I
yeah,
remember.
yeah, I was,
I was struggling with my own beginnings of career and still partying a lot, and Teddy was really successful. And I was like, oh, when am I going to be rich?
it was kind of like it just all happened so quickly for me. Like I was at Corcoran for 3 years, which was the real estate company, and then I got recruited to run marketing for a startup. And that was just a crazy, it was a crazy environment, and sort of as startups go, it wasn't managed well, and so was not a great experience. But and at that point, I ended up starting to use again. And that was it, like the pace of everything.
What year was that?
I was 32, and I'm 41 now.
Okay.
So about 8 years ago, 9 years ago,
Oh, I
and
didn't realize it was that long ago when you started. Okay.
yeah, yeah, I kept it secret for a long time. Um, yeah, so I started to use and then I ended up getting a job at the company called Douglas Elliman, which is a big real estate company in New York City, and I ran marketing for them, and I loved it. I was just like. I did amazing things at that company. I ran campaigns. I produced video series. I did built the department again. It was really incredible, but it was also for me. It was just I knew that I was running against the clock, like with my using. It was not sustainable. I was just really grinding metal to metal there. So I ended up losing my job due to COVID. Um,
Okay. Yeah, because I came to visit you
right
in
before.
2019. Yeah, at the end of 2019. So it was right before COVID kicked off. And I
Yeah.
remember you were like, let's have a glass of wine. And I
Yeah.
was like, what?
Yeah.
I'm
I know.
confused. Obviously, I was going to have wine, but I was like, you can have wine? And you were like, yeah, I just have it sometimes, just a little.
Yeah,
And
just a
I
little bit.
remembered being like,
Yeah,
okay.
I know. I had come out to my family that I was drinking. I think like a year or two before, and everybody. I would always say like, "Oh yeah, I have a glass of wine occasionally." Yet like here I am, it's chugging a bottle of wine when nobody's looking. Nobody thought it was a good idea. Everybody thought it was a terrible idea,
Yeah.
obviously.
I was
But
like, well, I trust you. Okay.
yeah, that's what kind of everybody was like, what are we gonna say? Like, no, like we're like,
Yeah.
so and everybody at work, like I would start to roll into work at like, I always rolled in at like 11 o'clock, but like I ran the department and was doing such a great job. So people sort of turned a blind eye. And I would always work late, but as my drinking progressed, I would leave right at 5 because I needed to get home and start drinking. So I would that it's like it was starting to get gradually worse and worse. And when COVID came around, I it was bad because that means that I was home all the time and could drink all the time. And so I ended up losing my job in May of 2020. They did a huge round of layoffs, and that was really, real. My job was like my identity. Um,
Yeah.
I, yeah,
I remember
like,
when you lost that. Yeah.
yeah,
That was big.
it was really, really, I mean, soul crushing. Like, I don't know who am I without this job? Like, who am I without my career? It was really, really rough. And I remember that was the first time that I drank. It was like I got the email at 10 a.m. and I just started drinking. And that was the first time I started drinking that much during the day. And then the wheels came off during COVID, like I didn't have a job. I didn't have any restrictions based upon how much I could drink, when I could drink. So it was really, really bad. I got into a really unhealthy relationship that also exacerbated,
Yeah.
um, you know. Um, and so by the time it was a year later, I
Yeah, it
got
was spring of 2021 was
yeah, I
when
had
things really
gotten
popped off.
another job. I had gotten another job where I was working remotely, but that didn't work out because I just was too drunk all the time. I couldn't keep it together. So by May, I think it was May, yeah, maybe earlier, April of 2021, I that's when my family found me and it was really really bad. I was in the hospital for like 3 weeks. I went out to California and went to rehab again. um,
Yeah,
and
before that happened, you called me one of those times, one of those last times when you were very, very, very drunk and the relationship had come apart. And I was walking to go to my friend's house for her birthday, and you were slurring your words so badly, and I was like, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" And like the call dropped, or you had to go. You were like, "I'll call you back," and then and I did not hear back from you. And I remember I got to my friend's place, and I was like, I'm like really worried about my friend, and I called you every day for like a month and nothing. And I was
nothing.
like, "Oh my God, what is going on?"
Yeah, that's when that was a lot of my friends, my close friends, because nobody was seeing each other during that time.
Yeah.
So, it was, but there were like, Teddy won't pick up FaceTime. Teddy won't, I mean, I tried to keep it together so much. So like when I was on calls, I would be like, muster every ounce of like normalcy that I could and be like, yeah, I'm fine, everything's good, blah blah blah. But I was in such bad shape. I was really really close to death. I was 2 days away from death when they found me. It was brutal. So I can't. That should have been my bottom, obviously,
Yeah.
but I just, anybody who's familiar with AA or substance abuse, you kind of know that like nobody can force you to want to quit drinking. It has to be something that you do on your own.
Yeah, it has to be an internal shift. I've had a few clients with this affliction, and it's really hard. It's just so
Yeah.
hard. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really, it's just I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy, honestly. It's a terrible disease. And so I went out to California, did the deal, did, 90 days in rehab, and,
And that's when you sent me a text. You were like, "Hey," it was like 3 months later after I'd heard nothing from you, and I just hoped that you were okay. And then you were like, "I'm in sober living in California." I was like, "Oh my God, I'm gonna come see you."
yeah.
Yeah.
So I went to, yeah, was in sober living in California, and then,
I hit pause. Okay, sorry, we had to take a quick pause to get a charger, but all good now.
all good now.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was in sober living in California and doing the deal as much as I could. I ended up being a manager. So I had about, I think, 7 months sober at this point. But it really dry, like not, I didn't feel like I had had my last drink. Like that was in the back of my head always. It was like, I haven't had my last drink yet. And when you have a thought like that, it just, it's
Yeah.
like a pebble in your shoe. Like it just aggravates you all the time. And so I ended up being a sober living manager at this sober living, which was way too much for me at that point. I was not ready for it. I had to be taking care. I was not healthy, mind, body, spirit, and I was taking care of these other sober, young,
Yeah,
newly sober.
what did the role entail? What were you doing?
Yeah, so I would drug test them, breathalyze them at night. I took care of the house. I also supported the IOP program, the intensive outpatient.
Okay.
So I would pick up the girls from the different houses, drop them off, do all sorts of errands for the IOP stuff. It was really intense. They worked us so hard, drive them to meetings at night. It was like a from 7 a.m. to midnight type of job. And it
Yeah.
was we got paid nothing. We had to pay for rent. It was really like not a great situation.
Yeah, I remember they
And
really worked you. Like it was a lot.
it was a
Um,
lot,
it
too
sounds
much.
like they should screen better for those roles. That's intense to have someone in recovery do all that.
Newly in recovery
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was definitely. It happened a lot that people relapsed, that girls relapsed from that role, because it was very high stress. You didn't have time to take care of yourself, and that was the
Yeah.
biggest thing. I
So
think
like
like
it makes sense like when you hit overwhelm and you don't have a substance abuse problem, when you hit overwhelm, you come home and you want to have a glass of wine or
yeah,
I mean, yes, you can meditate and do all
decompress.
that, but when I get so like when it's too much for me, I will have a glass of wine, you know?
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Yeah, and you want some sort of like at least to have some time to decompress.
Yeah.
And there was no time to decompress. Like there was no, it was just, we didn't have that luxury. And that was so important. It's so important in early recovery, especially, to be able to take care of yourself.
And in
And
any caring role, you can't like as a therapist or the training that we've had, like if I'm not 90 to 100% good in myself, I'm not going to be any good as a therapist that day.
yeah,
Like,
you need to
like,
fill your cup so you can
yeah,
give it to someone else.
totally.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I ended up, I ended up filling a prescription for Ambien, and relapsed and uh, ended up crashing.
Can you explain what Ambien is
Oh yeah, so
to our non-American
Ambien's a
listeners?
big part of my story. I was very addicted to Ambien. It's a sleep medication,
Okay.
where it does induce a sort of euphoric feeling. And what I would do is I would like microdose on Ambien throughout the day because it gives you just this incredible feeling. And so yeah, so it was always a huge part of my story. Like I used to order it from Canada and India. Um, and
Okay.
I used to say, like, if you gave me a glass of wine or if you gave me a bottle of Ambien, I would always take the Ambien before. So I got that prescription, and that was it. Within a week, I had crashed a treatment van, and the girls had gotten out of the car before, thank God, because I had like nicked another car, but I crashed and yeah, so I got kicked out of the sober living, and went on a run for a week, like basically like binge, in a hotel room. And then, and it was just, I knew, everybody kept saying, like, you need to go to treatment, and I was like, I need to run this out. Like, I need to just do this until I don't want to do it anymore. I'm telling you, I will not want to get sober I will not fully get sober until I just get this out of my system. So about a week later, it was like, you know, something, a higher power, the universe, whatever. I woke up one morning, there was a bottle of wine um, on the bedside table, and I didn't want to drink it. And I was just like, I am done. I will do, it was complete surrender.
Wow.
Like, didn't fight. I was just like, I will do whatever anybody tells me to do. I can't live this way anymore. I am so done. And that was it. And I went to detox. Then I went to treatment. And then I went to sober living for a year. A year.
Yeah.
Um,
What it was a different sober living. Yeah, okay.
that was a very basic, back to basics, AA based. You live, eat, and breathe AA. You
Okay.
go, the first night I was there, we did things called panel discussions. So we would go to like treatment facilities and detoxes and go speak and tell our story. It was, shared a room with five other women. Uh, it was,
Wow.
yeah, it was
Were they
very,
like
but
bunk beds?
bunk
Oh
beds,
my gosh.
total dorm life,
Wow.
exactly. We had chores, all the things, but it was so what I needed because it kept things so simple. It was like my only purpose was to be of service to other alcoholics and to clear the wreckage of my past. That's basically what the focus on getting through the steps and being of service. And like that is it just was such a relief to me because I was like, okay, this I can do. This
Yeah.
I can like it was not complicated and it was exactly what I needed. It really also checked my ego and checked all of those things like brought me back to who I was. I had to rebuild myself completely. Completely.
Yeah, and it sounds like the focus was more like less is more. You know, the
Mhm.
other one was overwhelmed because you were doing too much.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It was just like very just put one foot in front of the other. That was the mentality of this place. And it was when you're 40 years old and rebuilding like basically a baby out in the world, like that's kind of what I was. I was like, I have to clear everything from what I knew about myself. I have to start from scratch. It was um it was really yeah, it was really incredible. So and it was life changing for me. Life changing.
Yeah, and
Um
that's really the theme with or like the common theme with different people's rock bottoms is literally being like knocked off your feet. So you're like flat out and you have to reevaluate everything. And it's
yeah.
like a loss of the things that you previously defined yourself on. So,
Yeah.
like, it happens a lot when people are like in the wrong career or like their marriage falls apart. And it's like these things that comprise your identity are no longer. So, it's about going back to your core and
Yeah.
like reconnecting with yourself and like letting go of all. It's like a stripping process, like letting go of
Totally.
all the things. Yeah, so that's
Totally.
yeah, I the clients that I've worked with that have addiction, none of them have gone through the AA route, but yourself and quite a few other people that I know that I'm good friends with or have like worked with in other ways in the past have gone through the AA route, and it's yeah, if it works, then
If
it's
it
like
works,
yeah,
if it works, it really works. And I had never given it the proper, when I had gotten sober before, I'd never really like completely given myself to the process. When you do, I'm like, okay, I get it. I get why this works
yeah,
because it's really, you make amends to all of the people that, you've wronged, and that's really cathartic
very
and
humbling.
important.
Yeah.
And it really allows you to build that foundation that you need to to start anew. So that was really it's been really an integral part of my story, and also the service aspect, and that speaks to kind of what I do now.
Mm-hmm.
They've really instilled in me that desire, and it's so fulfilling, and it's also so necessary service work, and to be of
Yeah.
help to others. That's really been life changing for me as well. So yeah, so all of it. I yeah, I was still sort of figuring figuring out what I wanted to do after that year of being at Sober Living. I was sort of doing consulting marketing work. I was doing consulting marketing work, but work marketing is also a big or like that sort of being in that space is a little bit of a trigger for me,
Yeah.
uh, because it tends to be so like chaotic and just different. So I kind of had I had paused to do that, to get back into that. So I was sort of figuring out what I wanted to do, and I really wanted to be in the recovery space. Knew that
Yeah.
it was obvious. It was
I remember
something.
us talking about it because it was you were there for a year, and then it was like when you decided to leave and like start looking at other opportunities, like it was very fast. Like all of a sudden you were like, "Yeah, no, I'm leaving. I'm going back to New York." And I was like, "What?
Yeah.
What's going on?"
Yeah, so I'd been looking, like, and I'd gotten really far in a couple different job opportunities, and it was like, am I going to do this? Like, and everybody was sort of like, are you ready to like jump back into this? Because I was like a babe in the woods in a lot of
Yeah.
ways. Like, to jump back into being in New York at a corporate job, and like, and but it was also hard to find a job. Like, I looked for a really long time. And even in the space of, the span of a couple years, marketing changes so much because of all the digital stuff.
Yeah.
I found that I didn't know a lot of the things that were current or relevant. And that was really scary and hard too. Um, and so anyway, I was kind of at this place. It had been like 6, 7 months. I ended up getting a job at like a store in town. I was living at home at this point, with my
With your
parents.
parents, yeah.
Yeah. Which was humbling, but also like fine. Um, yeah, so I was working at, was humbled myself, and I was like, I'm just going to start working at a store for now. And I put pause on trying to find a job because it was just really, really, I was having a lot of trouble. And the job market was tough. And, so I ended up, but I knew in my heart that I considered going back to school to be a social worker. That was a big, like something that I was actually looking into for the next year. But I ended up, one of my friends that I grew up with is also sober. And he had one of his recovery coach, who's this amazing woman who's been doing this for 25 years. She has her own company. He was like, you should talk to her. She knows everybody in the space. And so I ended up talking to her, and she was like, take this course to become a recovery coach. And she kind of took me under her wing. And it was amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. It was amazing. It was like, within a week, I had my first client, who I was coaching. I met with her once a week. It was wonderful. I loved it. I felt like I was good at it. I knew it came really easily to me, which marketing came easily to me, but like it was all this just so much stress. I never knew it was going to come at me at any second. And this was just like, I felt like I knew what I was supposed to do. So from then on, I got a job in Texas, living in with the client for 4 months. It and then I got a job in California, which I'm currently doing, where I'm, working with a young woman. I work every other month, and it's a mental health case, and it's amazing. I mean, it's like what I was meant to be doing. It's just it's incredible work, and I'm really, really fortunate. And it also, provides a very good living for me. So I'm really, really grateful.
And it's really that, like, I wish that for everyone, that they get to a place eventually, which I think the only way to appreciate when you get to that place is to have experienced all the shit before. Like, it's kind of the
Totally.
only way. Like, but
Totally.
like, I wish for everyone at some point in their life to ultimately get to a place with their career where when they're working, it doesn't feel like work.
Totally.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I met with some of the people that I trained with over the weekend. We were doing a course, and a lot of us have private practices now. And one of my peers who trained with me, he said to me, he was like, like 2 months in after I had a long day with clients, I like wrapped up for the day, and I thought, oh my God, that didn't feel like work. And I was like,
Yeah.
I know, right? And we were both so excited about it. Like, but it
Yeah.
takes so much to get to that place. And I think people have this expectation a lot that like work is supposed to be hard. And like, but I think when you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, it doesn't feel like work. And
I
it
know,
just
and I
becomes,
never believed that. Like, I was like, okay, like, that's not possible. It's
yeah.
not like people just say that and it's annoying and whatever, but it's true. Like, once you find what your path is and what your kind of like, I don't know, what you're supposed to be doing, it's really does. I mean, yes, it's hard and it's exhausting at times, but it doesn't feel like you're constantly having to figure everything out. I think that's the difference. It's like there's not this mental exhaustion all the time of like not being able to not knowing what's coming next and having to figure everything out. So it's really, yeah, it's amazing, and I'm being of service in a way, which is like really a beautiful thing and kind of what I always wanted to do. So I never expected that I would be here, like at this, like be here doing this work, but it's amazing.
Yeah, and I remember when you were like, I met this woman and I'm gonna do this training, and I was like, oh my God, we're both gonna be like coach therapist. Like, this is
Yeah,
so amazing. We're in the same industry now. And we both,
yeah,
if we go back to when we were at, UCLA, like we were both on, well, I was lost. I had no idea. I just had no clue what I wanted to do. But you were very like art focused,
yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
like very much.
Totally. Yeah, I
Yeah.
was in our history major. I mean, I thought that I was going to be working for galleries and
Yeah.
had no idea. So it's just I think to my younger self, I would just be like, you don't know what's going to come around the corner. Like you really just go with it sort of thing, because you really, as best laid plans never work out. It's always like life is just going to come at you with things and it's going to unfold in the way it unfolds, and you just have to like kind of resign yourself to the process of it all, and like that's okay, and that's life. You don't always have to have this like huge plan, because the universe like has a plan for you.
Yeah, and it's literally as well like one, there's no wrong choice
Hmm.
with like it's kind of like you have to follow the breadcrumbs and you're going to be redirected like 1,000 times, and like it's the part where you said earlier, the like complete surrender. You
Hmm.
have to like allow it. So I find that when you are like heavily resisting or pursuing the wrong path, or what, or when the expression is what you resist persists. So it's like when you're pursuing the wrong path, it's just like endlessly frustrating and like a million things will go wrong. So it's like, okay, this isn't working. And it's the surrender, and it's like, show me what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, Um, yeah, well that story, like amazing. I'm really glad that I've been around for like half of it.
Yeah.
And also to have not just known you, but I know your family, and I know that your parents must be so proud of you right now
Hmm.
that you're like in such a good place. Something that I want to ask all the guests that come on here that I think is a helpful tool that I learned with some coaches that I worked with, is kind of looking at people's like money stories as well, because a lot of people end up pursuing careers because of money and it doesn't bring them happiness.
Yeah.
And so I think it's really helpful to like look at the stories that we learned around money with our upbringing, like
Hmm.
what was the programming we got from our parents, how we're or or whoever raised us, might not
Yeah.
be mom and dad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. My money has always been actually a big part, not the conversation, but like in the background in my family. My father always made a ton of money, but then they were big spenders, like very big spenders. So savings was not a big part of our story. Like it was always like this big like making a ton of money and then like ended up like not having any money and then making a ton of money and then not having any money. So it was this like a stress induced uh environment, and I that totally carried through to me. Was making a ton of money at when I was in marketing, not like $1 million, but a lot of money, and
Yeah,
I
you were doing
was
really well.
always broke, always broke. Like
Mm.
spent. I don't even know what I would spend it on. Just like I didn't even take like big trips. I would just spend. I mean, living in New York City,
You
it's
were living in
my
New York.
man
Yeah.
money. You literally go out the street, go walk out the door, and you spend $500. But to the extent, I've always been really bad with money. I just like candidly, and that's something I've had to learn this time around in sobriety. It's part of like managing the chaos in my life, which is a big part of, keeping serenity and all that stuff. Maintaining stillness and calm. So that's been a big, it doesn't come naturally to me, but I'm really proud of myself that I've done that this time around because I do make a good living in what I do now. I'm very fortunate. But it's that resisting that urge to just like, you have it, so you spend it, and save instead.
Well, and yeah, money is energy, and the shift in you, you have such a different energetic frequency now than you did
Hmm.
before. Do you know what I mean? Like you've done so much inner work and you've healed that what's going through your hands is being handled very differently now.
Makes so much sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
completely.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, okay. Well, yeah, so I was gonna say, do you have any advice for your younger self? But you kind of already
I
touched
feel
on
like
that.
I said that, yeah, a little
Yeah.
bit. And just like, you know, uh, and also you don't have to fight so hard for everything. I think that was always a big thing for me. It was like I always was so worried. I was so worried all the time that something wasn't going to work out or that I had to make everything like make sure that things worked out, and just like you don't have to fight so hard for everything. Just allow things to play out. It's sort of like what I said before, allow
Mhm.
the universe to like just take care of things. Like it's not all up to you, basically. You're not in, like, you don't have control over everything.
Yeah, that's a really good message.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the surrender, right?
Mm-hmm.
Trust.
Yeah, trust.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Teddy.
Yeah.
This was really wonderful. I'm really grateful that you were my first guest.
I'm very, very honored.
Yeah. And
Thank you.
maybe we'll come back in a year. You can be on
Yeah,
the next season as well. Yeah.
love that. Repeat guest for sure. Anytime. It was great to talk to you.
Thank you. Mwah.
Okay. Mwah. Bye.